Hi guys, it's Mr. Graham, obviously. I just wanted to kind of touch base with you and talk to you. Some of you have some issues maybe with not learning things as well unless it's explained to you out loud. So I thought this might be a good way to do that. We're going to talk about the Post-Impressionists today. Obviously, Post-Impressionist means afterwards. These guys are still considered Impressionists, but they're after the first run of them, after they became slightly accepted in society. So the guys that we're talking about today are Paul Cézanne, Paul Gauguin, Vincent Van Gogh, Henri ToulouseLautrec, and Georges Seurat. They're all French. You gotta, they all painted in France. You gotta know them all. You gotta know their works. These are all really iconic. The Post-Impressionists took the idea of Impressionism, the elbow stuff, and they added more on top of it. So it's the idea of going en plein air, outside. You see the same thing with a lot of the Post-Impressionists. They do go outside. And those little short brushstrokes now become much rougher, much longer brushstrokes, and they really focus on the geometric patterns to create a slightly different style. I had an art professor who explained really talented 12-year-olds tend to paint like Post-Impressionists. Okay, so they favored an emphasis on more symbolic content. A lot of stuff is really symbolic. It's got really dark outlines to it, or black outlines. It's really easy to tell a Post-Impressionist. The most famous Post-Impressionist is obviously Vincent Van Gogh. He struggled with mental health pretty much throughout his life. He had major issues with voices, with bipolar disorder. He had a whole string of psychiatric issues. One of the reasons they think is because the color yellow in his paints, in his oils, is a toxic, it's mixed with mercury. And so it tends to make you become a little crazy. So he was most famous for creating works in Arles, France, in the countryside out near Paris, and he did a lot of still lifes. Now, a still life, this is very important. A still life is a painting or a picture of something that is still. And so it's the idea of sunflowers in a vase, still life. Clogs on the floor, still life. A picture of dogs, not still, not a still life. Is a landscape a still life? No. Landscapes are landscapes. Still lives are set up. He is the most famous of all the Post-Impressionists, but he's probably not the most important. The most important is a guy named Paul Cézanne. He's widely considered the father of modern art. He's the guy who started it all off. He took still lifes, super cool guy, super cool ways to create still lifes. He literally took skulls, because he was kind of poor, out from the cemeteries and the other areas where they might be, brought them up, and then painted them, and then would occasionally take them back down to where they were buried. His most famous work is The Card Players. It was for a time the most expensive painting ever bought at auction. You'll see that on the video. He was really important for future painters, future modernists. Pablo Picasso considered him the first Cubist. All of the Fauvists, the guy who did Edward Munch, who did The Scream, also considered him a Fauvist. In short, really important dude. Gotta know him. Beyond Van Gogh and Cézanne, you've got Paul Gauguin. Now, what's interesting is Gauguin and Van Gogh were roommates for a time in Arles, and they were really good friends, thought, hey, cool, let's become roommates, and it did not work. Many people think that the reason that Van Gogh cut off his ear was because he got into an argument with Gauguin and cut off his ear and gave it to Gauguin. Gauguin used arbitrary colors. Arbitrary colors are colors that don't really belong in the scene, like a purple sky or a light blue beach. They don't fit quite right. He just figured that they looked cool, so that's what he used. Gauguin stayed in France for a little while, but then he took off. Part of it has to do with falling in love with a 14-year-old. France not enjoying that, so he moved to Tahiti, and he created beautiful exotic landscapes of Tahiti and paintings of Tahitian women. And so his most famous work is Tahitian Women on the Beach. It's a beautiful painting. It's very iconic. It is neat looking. His most iconic work, it's massive, it's 5 foot by 12 foot, is entitled Where Do We Come From? What Are We? Where Are We Going? It has a really cool story in Tahiti. He had gotten married and he'd had a child. Unfortunately, the child died and his wife died, and so he decided, broke, depressed, sick, in debt, he was going to kill himself on the 1-year anniversary of his child's death. And so he worked for a year painting this painting, worked feverishly for the year to paint this iconic work, Where Do We Come From? What Are We? Where Are We Going? And then tried to commit suicide. It failed, by the way. He lasted and lived. Henri Toulouse-Lautrec was another post-impressionist. He was among the first. He was a celebrity in Paris during his lifetime, not because he was a great artist, although he was, but because he was really short. He was a little person. He had a disease where his legs didn't grow, and so his legs literally were like 2 feet long. And so he's got the normal torso of a human being, but then his legs are this big. So, and then he was really able to pack it down to drink. He drank a lot of people under the table, and he came from a very rich family, and so he paid for a lot of the alcohol for those people who he liked to party with at Moulin Rouge and other places. Toulouse-Lautrec was famous for creating posters advertising dancers at Moulin Rouge or La Folie Bergère, and celebrating that bohemian lifestyle. The last of the post-impressionists you need to know is Georges Seurat. Seurat dot. He created my favorite work of art ever, and that's Sunday Afternoon on the island of La Grande Jatte. He uses pointillism, where he puts little dots of color on the canvas, and it's a massive canvas, and then you take a step back from those little dots and suddenly everything comes into focus and you understand the picture. There's a really famous scene in Ferris Bueller's Day Off where they go, it's found in Chicago, where they go to see this, and Cameron has an epiphany while reacting and seeing this painting. So that's post-impressionism in a nutshell. Okay, I hope that you all are fine, that you're good, and that you're doing what you can do in order to stay healthy. Number one. Number two, get together with your families. And number three, this is a great time to learn something. Find something that you are passionate about. You've got lots of time. Learn something. It doesn't have to be art, although art is kind of cool. It doesn't have to be dance, although dance is kind of cool. It doesn't have to be theater, although you've got really cool opportunities to watch all of this theatrical stuff for free. It doesn't have to be a music, but it ought to be something. You have a rare opportunity. I'm going going to sign off for today. I'll have another video here shortly explaining what you need to do for your project for this week. It's good to see you guys. Give me a call, give me a text. You've got my stuff. Email me if you've got any questions. I'm here to help. Love you.